So today we're going to continue on with plant systems. So that's notes number 46. Go ahead and take it out. So on numbers 1 through 10, you should already know the answer to those from our previous class. So we'll start off with number 1. Number 1 says to define a tissue. As you know, a tissue is just a group of specialized cells that work together and perform the same function. For example, your heart cells, they all do the same function, so therefore your heart is a tissue. All of your skin cells, for example, they all function the same way, so your skin is also considered a tissue. So on number 1, define tissue. It's a group of specialized cells. So go ahead and write that down for number 1. So unlike animals and humans, plants have a cell wall, and that outer layer is called the epidermis. And the epidermis is just a single layer of cells that cover the outside of the plant. So on number 2, it says what type of tissue lines the outside of the plant? The answer, epidermis. Number 3, it says what is a cuticle? We talked about this. A cuticle is just a waxy covering that prevents water loss. So we talked about leaves being very shiny and smooth to the touch. That is due to the cuticle. And it's very important for plants that live in dry, hot climates like deserts. Their leaves are made of cuticle, and it's just that shiny, waxy covering that prevents water loss. So number 3, waxy covering that prevents water loss. So on the leaf of all plants, there are tiny little pores called stomata. In these stomata, they have guard cells, which look like these little bean structures right here. Those guard cells actually control the size and the opening of the stomata. And the stomata allows for gas exchange, for example, like oxygen, carbon dioxide, as well as water vapor. So on number 4, it says, what are stomata? They are tiny pores used for gas exchange. Go ahead and write that down for number 4. On number 5, it says, what cells regulate the size of these stomata? And the answer, guard cells. Remember, Mr. B gave you that analogy. The mouth represents the stomata, whereas the lips represents the guard cells. So number 5, guard cells. So plants have vascular tissue, and vascular tissue is super important for all plants. They help transport water and nutrients throughout the plant. And there are 2 main types of vascular tissue, and that is the xylem and phloem. So on number 6, it says, what does vascular tissue do? That is, transport water and nutrients. Go ahead and write that down for number 6. Transport water and nutrients. Alright, so let's talk about those two vascular tissues. So xylem, it carries water and minerals from the roots through the shoot system. On number 7 it says, what does xylem carry? And the answer, water and minerals. So go ahead and write that down for number 7, water and minerals. So in class, I gave you an easy way to memorize what xylem carries. So if you forgot to write it down, go ahead and write it down now. So a great way to memorize it was WXY. And that W represents water, whereas the XY represents xylem. So that's an easy way to remember what the xylem carries. Number 8. What does the phloem carry? The phloem carries organic compounds like sugar. As you know, plants produce sugar called glucose. So that sugar is in a form of food that animals and humans can eat. So on number 8, what does the phloem carry? The answer, sugars. Sugars. And if you forgot, that sugar is called glucose. And remember, any word ending in OSE is a sugar. An easy way to memorize what the phloem carries is that the PH sounds like the letter F. And we all know sugar is food. So FF, phloem, food. So plants have two systems, the root system and the shoot system. As you know, the root system absorbs water and minerals. On number 9, what part of the plant absorbs water from the ground? The answer, root system. Number 9, root system. Go ahead and write that down. Number 9, root system. In order for the water to travel up through the plants, it's going to go through the vascular tissue called the xylem. So on number 10, what carries this water through the plant? The answer, xylem. Go ahead and write that down on number 10, xylem. So remember those tiny little pores on the leaves called stomata? That allows for gases to enter and exit the leaf. So whenever water vapor exits the leaves, that is called transpiration. On number 11, what is transpiration? That is when water evaporates from plants. So on number 11, go ahead and write evaporation of water from plants. Go ahead and circle number 11 as well. That's a great question I would ask on the binder test. Number 11, evaporation of water from plants. The stomata play a very important role for plants, especially if they live in arid climates, like for example, deserts. Deserts are super hot and dry. So on number 12, it says, what does it mean for an ecosystem to be arid? And the word arid means dry. So number 12, the answer is dry. So plants living in arid climates like the desert, losing water can be a problem for these plants and very detrimental. So to prevent transpiration, which just means evaporation of water from leaves, leaf cells send this hormone to the guard cells around the stoma to signal them to stay closed during the heat of day. So if the guard cells are closed, that means no water can leave that plant. Very important. So on number 13, how do plants prevent water from evaporating? The answer, stoma stays closed. Stoma stays closed. That is number 13. Stoma stays closed. We are all very familiar with the process of photosynthesis. Plants perform photosynthesis. So if plants perform photosynthesis, what organelle must they have? And we all know that to be chloroplast. On number 14, what organelle performs photosynthesis? The answer, chloroplast. Go ahead and write that down. Number 14, chloroplast. So plants, they produce sugars. In order to produce this sugar, they need to use the sun's energy to convert or to change CO2 and water into sugar. On number 15, it says, what does a plant make sugar out of? It makes sugar out of CO2 and water. Number 15, the answer is CO2, carbon dioxide, and water. They do this by taking solar energy. So remember, solar energy just means the sun, and convert it or change it into chemical energy. And remember, that chemical energy is food. On number 16, photosynthesis performs what energy conversion? The answer, chemical. Number 16, the answer is chemical. So believe it or not, plants actually store extra food and that extra energy in their root systems. And in order to get the food to the root system, it's going to travel through the phloem. Remember, phloem means carrying food or nutrients or sugar. On number 17, it says, what carries sugar around the plant? And the answer, phloem. So go ahead and write that down for number 17, phloem. On number 18, it says, where can extra energy be stored? The answer, root system. Number 18, root system. Alright, so let's talk about turgor pressure. Turgor pressure deals with how rigid a plant is. For example, if you look at the picture below, let's look at this picture here of this celery. This one has high turgor pressure versus this celery over here, this poor little celery. This one has low turgor pressure. You can obviously see the difference between those two pictures. The one with the high turgor pressure, look how stiff this celery is. Look how rigid it is. But if you look at this celery here, this poor limpy celery, this one has low turgor pressure, and therefore this is not very rigid. It kind of flops over, not very strong and sturdy. That is due to the amount of pressure inside of the vacuoles. So do y'all remember what the vacuoles store? Vacuoles store that extra water, the extra nutrients. So whenever a healthy plant has plenty of water, the turgor pressure is very high, making them very rigid. So turgor pressure on number 19. What is turgor pressure? Turgor pressure is the amount of pressure exerted on the plant cell walls by water. So all of that water pushing up against the vacuole will exert pressure on the cell walls and therefore making it very strong and very rigid, causing it to have high turgor pressure, just like this celery right here. So on number 19, the answer, the amount of pressure exerted on the plant cell walls by water. So this is a pretty long answer, so try not to write too big. Number 19 is the amount of pressure exerted on the plant cell walls by water. Go ahead and write that down for number 19. Alright, on number 20, how will healthy plants with plenty of water appear? They will appear rigid. So the answer is in green, just like this picture right here to the left. The celery has very high turgor pressure, making them rigid. So on number 20, the answer is rigid. And rigid, like I said, is just another fancy word for stiff, or strong, or sturdy. So on number 20, rigid. So water is transported by the xylem. Remember xylem. And remember, the easy way to remember what xylem carries is WXY. And once the water travels up through the xylem, it's going to then travel up the petiole. So remember, the petiole is right there. So that's like the stem of the leaf. And then once it goes up the petiole, it's going to move through the veins. So if you look at this picture here, it's kind of zoomed in a little bit. These little gray little lines, these are the veins on the leaf. And that's what helps distribute the water through the leaves and to the leaf cells. So on number 21, what vascular tissue is most associated with carrying water? And you know that answer to be xylem. So number 21, xylem. So we've talked about the word osmosis a bunch of times. And osmosis, remember, is the movement of water. And what I told you to always write down is H2 osmosis. So if you want to write down H2 osmosis, go ahead and do that. So whenever water is moving in and out of cells, that is due to osmosis. So on number 23, what cell process causes water to enter or leave a cell? And the answer, osmosis. Go ahead and write that down for number 23, osmosis. So whenever plants want to change the turgor pressure, what they do is they actually release certain ions. Okay? And whenever they do that, it causes water to either move in or move out depending on what it wants to do. So plants maintain a homeostasis just like animals and humans. So on number 24, what do plants do to cause water to quickly enter or leave a cell affecting turgor pressure? The answer, releasing certain ions. That is number 24, releasing certain ions. So turgor pressure plays a role on how plants respond to external stimuli, for example, like touch. So whenever plants respond to touch, that is called thigmonastic or thigmonasty. That's a funny little word. So on number 25, it says, what do we call a plant's rapid response to touch? And the answer is thigmonastic. Thigmonasty. On number 25, thigmonastic. So some great examples of plants that perform thigmonasty or respond to touch is this picture on your left. You've seen this picture before. I think I've shown it in class. This is a picture of the Venus flytrap. So see this red part of that plant? There are tiny little hairs on that plant. And whenever a bug or a fly walks across the red part of the plant, it shuts its mouth in order to collect nutrients. And in this picture to your right here, this is a person's finger. Whenever this person touches the leaf of this plant, the leaves actually kind of fold upward. That is its way of defending itself. So that's a defense mechanism for this plant here. And for this plant on the left, their reason is to collect nutrients. So on number 26, what are the two primary reasons for thigmonastic movements in plant? The answer, collect nutrients or as a defense mechanism. Number 26, collect nutrients or as a defense mechanism. Alright, so plants, they actually can reproduce, well at least some of them do, and plants have reproductive organs. We talked about this before, and those reproductive organs found in vascular plants are called flowers and cones. On number 27, what are the reproductive organs found in vascular plants? The answer, flowers and cones. So in this picture here, these are the cones. In this picture here, this is the flower. So remember I told y'all the flower is actually the ovaries. And the pollen that is transferred to the flower through birds and bees are actually the sperm. Just a little weird and nasty. So on number 27, the answer is flower and cones. Number 28. Let's move on to the next slide. So I love eating fruits. They're so delicious, especially watermelon and strawberries. Yummy. In plants, that fruit is actually part of the flower. So if the flower is the ovaries, that means the fruit is also the ovaries. And as you know, seeds are found in fruits, and the seeds are actually considered the eggs, or in other words, it's known as the ovules. So on number 28, what part of the flower actually becomes the fruit that you eat? And the answer is ovaries, or ovary. Number 28, ovary. On number 29, what part of the flower actually becomes the seeds? And the answer is ovules. So on number 29, the answer is ovules. I also want you to write in parentheses that that is called the eggs. So number 29, I want you to write down ovules, and in parentheses, I want you to write down eggs. So eggs are just ovules. On number 30, what triggers these changes in plants' flowers? The answer is hormones. Number 30, hormones. Alright, if you are missing any of the answers for your notes, please ask your shoulder partner or someone around you. Please do not get out of your seat. Alright, so we are done with notes. So at this time, go ahead and take out the little reading excerpt titled Human Impact on the Carbon Cycle. Your sub will give you further instructions on what to do. Please behave, and I will see you as soon as possible once I get back from Austin. Bye, y'all.